Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I made these magical crystal fairy pendants out of resin, polymer clay, and wire. They are super fun and look really cool, and with that being said, let's get started. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is get some UV resin in 3 different silicone molds. I chose a square, a circle, and a triangle. And I chose 3 different colored dyes. You don't have to use dye, but that's what I'm going to do in this project. I'm just putting 2 drops of each color in each mold. That way it'll turn out to be really cool looking once it hardens with the UV light. Now I'm just filling each mold up with UV resin and making sure that I get all the way to the top so it doesn't leave like a crease in the crystal. And then I'm going to cure these. Once you had filled them all the way up, we're going to stick them under the UV light and we're going to cure these 2 to 3 times until they're completely dry. Wow, look how cool these turned out. This is my first time making actual crystals with these molds because I saved it until I did a new project and they turned out really cool. Now I just went and chose 3 different colored clays for this project. Pretty much this is an easy part. I just took the clay and I rolled it out with my roller, and then I'm just going to wrap it around one end of the crystal and kind of form like a circle around it, making sure that the entire end of a crystal is covered. If you think you have too much clay like I did on this one, you can cut it off and just kind of reform the circle on one end. It's not a big deal. You can make it as short as long as you want it to be. Here I'm just using my roller to just kind of even it out. It makes it to where it gets rid of the finger marks on your clay, so that always works for me. For some reason, this green clay that I have is really sticky and it was sticking to my roller. I'm not sure what's going on here, but I made it work somehow. I pretty much did the same thing as I did to the blue one on the green one. Cut off any extra if you think there's too much and just form a circle on one end of the crystal. All done on the green one, now to work on the white one. So we're going to do the exact same thing as we did to the other 2 and form a circle on one end of the crystal. Okay, to add some jewelry to these pendants to make them look like pendants, I just found these 3 little rings in my jewelry box, and I'm going to stick them in the top of the clay and just pretty much pull over the clay over top of the ring. That way it'll hide the bottom part of the ring and the top part will stick out. Okay, after we do the last ring in the clay, we're going to make sure that they are completely covering the ring on the bottom half like that. Now we are going to just pull down the clay that we formed into a circle down the crystal and just shape it out into the way you want it to look. That way whenever you go to add details and different pieces of clay and jewelry, it'll look really cool and you'll be able to stick it to something. For the blue one, I'm going to stick this little jewel on my blue one, and then I'm going to roll some clay out, and I'm going to wrap it around the jewel to stick it to the piece. That way it doesn't fall off when I bake it. For the clay color, I chose to use brown to wrap it around there. I'm going to make some little twisted things on the side of it so it look really cool. And I'm just using my tool to make sure that I place it in the correct spot. I'm just adding the little brown twisted parts now. They kind of look like twisted vines of some sort. It makes it look really cool, like some sort of wizard wand or something. These fairy pendants are starting to look really cool. The fun part about this project is that it's super easy and you can make them any way you want. You can add jewels or you can add different jewelry pieces to this. I'm just making them super simple and fun. Here I'm just adding some little pebbles and putting it and placing it into the clay. That way when I bake it, it doesn't fall out. Alright, and then make sure I put them on each side so it doesn't look uneven or anything. And this is what we have so far. Next, I'm working on the white one. I just put a little moon piece on there. And this jewel's really cool. I'm just wrapping some black clay around the moon to keep it in place. I'm going to add a couple more jewels to this one. I'm going to put some little blue ones on the side to look like little stars, and it looks really cool to me. I'm just making sure everything's even, using my tool to make sure that I can make it completely even on the bottom. I'm also wrapping more clay around the bottom half. I'm putting some blue looking vines coming down it. That way it has some kind of design to see what it turns out like. Just roll out some clay and make some vines and place them on there anywhere you want. Double check everything to make sure it's how you want it to look and make sure all the pieces are secured down with clay. That way they don't fall off when you bake it. Here's what we have so far on this one. Now I'm working on the green one, adding a red jewel to the middle. And then I'm going to add some yellow clay to keep it secure and from falling off when you bake it. I'm using my tool to make sure everything's secured down, that way it won't fall off. I have a little round end on one part of my tool and a knife on the other. This helps keep it in place and presses it down evenly on each side. I'm going to make some little yellow vines on this one curling around the crystal because I think that's awesome looking. I really love how these are turning out. For this project, I'm just going to put 3 different vines wrapped around this crystal and not put too many so it don't look overdone. Here I'm just adjusting the vines on the crystal, and now I'm going to add some tiny little crystal sequins on the side of it. And I'm using my little needle nose pliers to apply them because they're so tiny, and every time I try to pick them up with my fingers, they want to fall out of my hand. And I've dropped like probably a million of them in the floor. But this is the best course of action, so if you have needle nose pliers or rounded pliers, they definitely come in handy at this point. Okay, I decided I'm going to add some to each of the projects. So I'm going to add a few of them to this white one first, and then I'm going to add a couple to the blue one as well. Make them more shiny and more fairy-like with all the sparkly stuff on them. These jewelry pieces are so cool and so much fun to make. If I would have known back in the day how much fun it is to use clay like this, I would have probably made so many by now. Making these are a great stress reliever too because you're doing something and you're staying constantly busy, so you forget about everything else. And I'm just trying to focus on making them look really cool. So far, they are looking extremely amazing, and look how shiny they are. I'm loving it. You don't have to do this step, but because I've seen everybody else online getting these pigments or mica powders, if you ever heard of them, they're adding just some color and different shades of stuff to these polymer clay pendants, making them look more rustic and more realistic. And so I thought, why not go on Amazon and purchase some of these? They're really awesome. The pigments I bought are called chalk pastels, and they're only 12 bucks on Amazon. There's so many different varieties, but I got the mini version, and I'm trying to make these pendants look like they're thousands of years old, like they've been sitting somewhere waiting for somebody to find them, because of course they're fairy pendants, and you have to find them in like caves or abandoned places or somewhere secret. I'm just putting a little bit of chalk pastels on these. I don't want to put too much because I don't want them to look overdone or like too cool, if you know what I mean. They just have to look just right. I like how the chalk pastels make them look kind of like they're old timey and like they've been sitting around forever. That's my favorite part. Plus, they're super pigmented and you can use them in like makeup tutorials or if you want to make some colored paint or pretty much anything you can think of, you can use these. Just scrape a little bit off with like a knife or a cutting tool and they work just fine. Out of all three of these, so far, my favorite one is the green one because it's probably the coolest looking out of all three of them. I showed my daughter and she thought the same thing. Like, the green one is her favorite too. This one definitely looks like it's been around for ages. I'm really loving the pastels. Now, what I'm doing is getting some jewelry wire, like this one right here. I'm using the 12 gauge jewelry wire and I have a pair of rounded nose pliers and I'm pretty much just bending it and trying to make a really cool looking twirly thing because it's going to go around the pendants once I bake them. But before we do that, we are going to place them in the toaster oven and we are going to bake these first. I'm going to bake them at 300 degrees for 10 minutes and you might have to do it between 10 and 15 minutes depending on your toaster oven. Now we're going to take our jewelry wire and we're going to figure out which way we want to twist these and add them to our pendant. And what I did is just place it around the top of it and kind of bend the wire around it. Then I'm going to take the rest of the wire and bend it around the rest of the pendant, kind of like this. You'll get the hang of it and you'll start to figure out which way you want to twist your wire because you can twist it pretty much any way you want. I definitely recommend getting a pair of rounded nose pliers because it makes the twisting process so much easier. Wire's kind of hard on the fingers and look at that. Looks pretty cool to me. And that one's done. Now we are working on the green one. I just keep twisting it until I find some cool design to where the wire won't fall off of the pendant, and get it on there just like this. Just keep twisting and twisting and use the pliers as needed, making cool little twirly things if you want. Now we're going to add some UV resin to these. The UV resin will preserve the polymer clay and give it a shiny, crystallized effect. This is the part that makes them look more fairy-like because they look so cool, like they're stuck in like tree sap or something. I'm curing the UV resin between layers. That way it gets plenty of time to cure, making sure they are completely dry. We're doing the same thing to the blue one. We are adding UV resin, making sure we cover up all the little crystals and sequins that we put on top of there. That way they are covered in resin, and then we cure it. Now look how cool those are. We already did the white one and we added some chains to them. I bought necklace chains on Amazon. They're like $10 for a pack of like 100, and it wasn't bad at all. They turned out really cool. Let me know what you think of these, and if you enjoy my content, subscribe to my channel. See y'all soon.